You could probably hear me without this thing, but then the live stream wouldn't work very well. So we're going to go ahead and get started a tad bit early because we have a lot of things to go through, and I want to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. Because a lot of you have stopped me in the hallway earlier with questions and answers. And then at the end, after the end of this, I will actually be out in the lobby area if you want to ask questions and things like that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So welcome to Plottr for Pantsers, or Discovery Writers, whatever words you want to use. We're going to talk a lot about that today, but we're also going to talk about some other strategies that just any writer can use in using this program called Plottr. And it's a really cool thing. Now, you may wonder who I am, because some of you may have looked at the program and been expecting Cameron Sutter. Cameron Sutter is our main programmer, co-founder dude, and he writes all the code, I write all the words. He's not here today, he took off on an airplane, so you got me instead. But since Cameron's not here, I'm going to tell you I'm better. Anyway. So you're going to get a better presentation anyway. I'm the education lead for Plottr, so if you've seen my face, it's probably on YouTube somewhere talking about Plottr. I'm a mystery and thriller author, over 25 novels, that'll be north of 30 by the end of the year, and have big plans for next year. I'm based in Idaho. I'm actually not in Boise anymore. I'm about an hour away from Boise near the Idaho-Oregon border. Super cool place. And I've been a guest speaker all over the place at tons and tons of conferences, especially 2020 when we couldn't go anywhere, but we could travel via Zoom. So it was really fun. But that's enough about me, except to say that I used to be a discovery writer. Before I became a Plottr, I did not plan my drafts. Now, it didn't go well for me in college, but that's another story. And it involves other items as well. But yeah, so I didn't plan my novels. And on one of my first novels that was actually commercially successful, I got about 2/3 of the way through and said, you know what would be helpful? If I knew how this was going to end. And so I plotted the last section of it. Well, the next novel I wrote, I was like about 1/3 of the way through. I was like, you know what would be helpful? And as I became more of a commercial writer, I knew I needed to write faster. So a lot of times people are like, they come to 20Books, they're like, we're not talking about craft around here. We don't really talk about craft. What I'm going to talk to you about is efficiency, is producing faster. If you're a discovery writer, one of the problems that you may have, or may not, is your first draft may be really, really bad. And so you may need some tools to do something with it. Anyway, so you may be asking yourself, what is Plottr? It's a visual book outlining and story Bible software for writers. I'm going to emphasize the story Bible part, and I'm going to emphasize when you outline, when you're a discovery writer. It's available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, also as a web app. I'll talk to you about that a little bit as we go along. It's been downloaded by tons of writers. We've been seen all over the place. You may have, if you were in one of Dave's sessions yesterday, you may have seen me harassing him about integration with Plottr and Atticus. Go ahead, cheer. Yeah, because I'm pushing for it too, so I just harass him every time I see him, but you've seen us all over the place. But you may also be asking, how can something be called Plottr help pantsers? Now I hear this all the time. People are like discovery writers, and they're like, just the name Plottr makes me itch, right? I get it, I understand, but it actually does compute. Because the difference is only when you outline. So plotters outline before they write. Discovery writers sit down and they write. And then what? Well, usually you have some sort of revision process, and you're finding out, does my story actually hit any story beats? Checking your work. How did I do? Right? So you still plot, there's a plot at a different time, generally, or sometimes you plot along the way. And we're going to talk about that as we go along as well. So I'm going to talk about 4 ways, and maybe even a bonus 5th way, about how I have seen discovery writers use Plottr. You probably will come up with another way. Okay, that's perfectly okay, because Plottr is extremely flexible, so you can use it for all kinds of things. So we're going to talk about post-plotting. We're talking about revising your first drafts. We're going to talk about managing series Bibles, and then tracking tentpole events. And I'm going to explain that to you because some of you that are discovery writers probably do that. Now, how many in here are discovery writers, like pure discovery writers? How many plotters or semi-plotters? How many a mix? You kind of plot, kind of plan, kind of a plantster type thing. Okay, one more question for you all. Who is brand new to Plottr? You've never used it before. How many of you are already own Plottr? Okay, a good mix. So I'm going to do what Dave did yesterday, kind of been talking about Atticus. Okay, is I'm going to give you some general overview of how Plottr works as we go through this demo here. I'm going to give you a general idea of how Plottr works, but I'm not going to go super in depth with how it actually works, right? I'm going to show you some basics. If you want to know about that, if you want a more thorough demo, come see me afterwards, and I'll show you more of the ins and outs and details of that. So I'm kind of going to assume you have a little bit of prior knowledge, not too much, then we're going to start looking at things, okay? So let me first of all say that when you first open Plottr, this is generally not what you see. Usually you will see either a dashboard like this, you can actually choose. Don't laugh at all the names of my books. And I have more Plottr files probably than anyone on the planet, so we won't dwell on that particular fact. Although I did make the programmers kind of freak out when I uploaded it first to Plottr. But usually you'll see that dashboard, or you will see a timeline like this. The timeline contains plot lines, which is these things right here that you see. This is what we call plot lines. And across the top can be, you can rename the structure. You can name it scenes, beats, chapters, whatever you would like. You do that by clicking on this little structure thing. You come down here, and I can change it to beat. Also, you're not allowed to laugh because I will type something wrong because I'm doing it live in front of all of you. But for this particular demo, I'm going to change this back to scene. And you're going to see the reason for that in just a minute. I tend to write in scenes. Some people write in beats. Some people write in chapters. You can add additional plot lines by coming down and just clicking add and adding a name for it. Maybe this is your subplot. Okay. Now some of you are already, of course. Like some of you already are going, ooh, plot lines, ooh. Okay, relax, we'll get there. Okay. And then you can add additional scenes again, the plus sign up at the top. And we're actually going to talk about that little handy thing that you see there called use template. We're going to talk about that later when we talk about revision. Okay, so that's a general overview of this section of Plottr. Okay, this section, as we come across the top, you can actually look at this like it's an outline. Again, some of you are freaking out, relax. Just because the tab is there doesn't mean you have to click on it and use it. It's okay. You can skip that part, okay? But there's also a place to put notes, okay? Notes are a super, super cool thing for housing your research. So even if you're not using the timeline section at all, like I'm not creating a plot line at all, you can use Plottr to contain your research notes. I have to have links in here. This is a super cool thing that I'm not going to show you, but this is chemist did a great study on strychnine. If you want to see it afterwards and learn more about poison people, let me know. And about this really cool thing that happened in Australia. I can go on for. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. But you can put whatever things in there. You notice I've added categories here. You can customize these categories. I happen to have added research, story ideas, and themes. That tends to be some of the research that I use. Sometimes I use pre-writing. I'll just call it pre-writing research. And then during writing research, often what I'll do is I'll come in here and put a note that I need to research something. I won't necessarily research it at the time, especially if I'm in the middle of Nano and I'm having a conference in Vegas and my son's graduating from Navy basic training and I'm falling behind. Anyway, but all of those things. Okay, so I'm not going to do research as I go, but I'm going to come in and put different categories in. But you can choose whatever categories that you would like. This just happens to be one I've chosen for these. You can also choose attributes when it comes to notes. Now, attributes are attributes are universal things that you want on a note. So you may want to know, if you're doing research, you may want to know what's the source of this, right? Where did I find this information? You might want to know something else about this information, maybe a link, okay? And if I put those, and you'll notice that over here in the note section, those two attributes appear on every single one of these notes. It's kind of a universal thing you want to know about each note. Super cool. Again, we can talk more about that capability later on. If we move on to characters, it's the exact same thing. We have attributes. We have different categories of our characters. So the attributes is something that's going to apply to every character. Maybe I want to know eye color and hair color on all of them. I can create categories for my characters. Main, antagonist, supporting, victim, in my particular case. Usually that means they're dead pretty quick, but you know, sometimes people want to know something about them, right? When you click into the character thing, there's a number of things you can do. You can do a name, short description. You can choose an image, like a thumbnail image, and then you can have attributes, which are your universal things. You notice this is, we put these in, they show up here. You can put in a character bio or some additional character templates. Now, when we get into characters and places, this is some of the places where discovery writers like to play a lot. Like you may want to construct your characters and have yourself a series Bible here, and you may not use anything else in Plottr except for this section. We're actually going to talk about that in just a minute as well, and how people do that. But you can use any number of these character sheets. One of our more popular ones that romance writers use is this online dating profile. If you choose this one, you got your headline, you're about me. What is your character looking for? How old are they? Sexual preference, gender, etc., etc. Pronouns, location, relationship status, all these different things. And you can fill this in about your character. For romance writers, this is a great thing. I mean, where we find romance nowadays online, apparently. I don't know exactly how that works. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Can you build your own template?
Oh, yes, you absolutely can. So you can build attributes. You can come over here to the custom attributes, and you'll see I can save this as a template. Name it whatever I want, so you have your own choices for your own characters. So if I bring these up again, if I click into one and I bring up the templates again, you'll see that at the top it says My Templates, and those are all templates that I've made. Most of those are for like webinars and stuff like that, because I don't have a lot of pig characters in my book. Figure that out. But yeah, so these are all things that you can do with characters. But one of the coolest things is you can choose which book your character is in, and then you can filter by that. So I've only added one particular book, and that is what this demo is really about. But then you're only looking at the characters in that particular book, or if you want to look at your entire series Bible, you can unclick that. Okay. And again, this is just really fast overview of the mechanics of Plottr. And same thing over here. I've got places. I've got them in different categories. You know, houses, murder scenes, public spaces, maybe, where something happens. But you can put anything here. Planets, those different categories can be anything you want. Planets, countries, whatever you're using with your fantasy, whatever that looks like. You can add pictures. The other thing that I add, because I write mysteries and thrillers, I base them on actual locations, is I add a Google Street View link. And I can go to that Google Street View link, describe what my character is doing in that area, describe that to my reader, and pop right back into my writing space without disturbing my concentration. So that's one of the things that I do as well. Okay? So that's what places look like. Tags, we'll talk about these really briefly. Tags can be used to add an extra layer of organization to your project. You can make them whatever you want them to do that makes relationships between places, characters, different scenes, things like that. If you want to know more about this, we'll demo that. I'll demo that out there later on. I can show you all kinds of different things. If you have a specific question, I can answer it better then. But we'll leave some time for questions at the end, I promise. Time is flying away from me all the time. So we're going to talk about 4 ways, and I'm going to talk about a bonus way that discovery writers use Plottr. Now this one's called Plot As You Go. Plot As You Go is simply this. At the end of your writing session today, how many people write in Scrivener? Word, something else. What's your something else? Ooh, you just hurt my heart a little, but I'm all right. You're so good. Anybody else? What's your other? What's that? Pages, okay, yeah, pages.
Dabble.
Oh, Dabble, okay, cool, yeah. Dabble's a cool one. We talked about it anyway. Yeah. That's a cool one. But anyway, whatever your writing software, you're done with your writing session that day, you come in here, let's say I wrote these words on 6/22/22. And all I do is put in here a summary of what I wrote that day. Right? Be honest with yourself and just write a summary. No judgments. This is a first draft, remember, all first drafts are terrible. Okay? So no judgment, just write down a summary of what you wrote that day. Because all you're going to do is put things on a plot line as you go, because you're going to use them later. And we're gonna talk about how the ways that you can use those later. But if you write this as you go, all you're doing is building a summary of your story, so that when you go back to revisions, you can look at what you've written compared to what you planned to write and see how you did. And it's gonna speed up your revision process. Again, this is about efficiency, speeding things up, right? I'm not telling you you can't be a discovery writer. I'm saying, if we're gonna be discovery writers, let's do it with a little more efficiency so we can write faster. Because you all know the people that plan, you know, James Patterson writes a 20-page single-spaced outline and then he writes out a book, right? Most of you that are in this room that are discovery writers are not gonna have that, okay? So that's how this one works, and I'll talk about this just a touch more in a minute. And also, to show you a cool feature, this is what I'm operating on. This is where you normally create your series. This would be book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, right? Instead, I put these 4 different methods, but you can use it the exact same way for creating your entire series and tagging your characters in places. Okay. The next one is what I call deconstruction. And I use this one a lot because I'm an editor as well as being an author. If you come to me and you want me to edit your manuscript, the very first thing I'm going to do, if you do not have a Plottr file, is I'm going to create one for you. I am going to tear your book apart scene by scene and put every one on a plot line. Now, why do I do that? Anybody got any ideas? Or you've heard me say this before?
Catching plot holes.
Catching plot holes, exactly. And seeing where you created scenes that are extra. Like you wrote this scene and you were telling yourself part of the story, and honestly, the reader doesn't need to see it. Now, why do you as an editor want me to go through and correct the grammar and commas in a scene that we're gonna delete? How many people want to pay me to do that? Sound good? I mean, come see me after if you do. You know, I'm good with that. I'm actually not. Anyway. But so basically, look, save yourself money, save yourself time by going through your summary of your scenes that you've actually written and figured out. So the only difference here is I'm not writing those out as I go. I'm waiting until the draft is done. And on my first read through, I'm reading through each scene and putting an honest summary. Then you'll see down below that I've got some plot structures that we're going to talk about. And you can compare now what you've written to an established plot structure. And you can say, did I hit those beats? Did I not hit those beats? We're not starting with plot structure. I'm not telling you you have to write to a plot structure. I'm telling you, when you're done, check your work. Just a secondary way to check your work, okay? And I'll talk about that once we get through the different ways of doing this. Now, the next one is going to be some of you's favorite. Timeline? Are you kidding me? I know writers that use Plottr they don't even come in this tab. Like, except maybe to delete something that's bugging them, right? They never put a single thing in here. The only thing they use Plottr for is tracking those characters in places, so that they don't have to refer back. How many of you have ever, I know none of you have probably ever done this, right? But you're writing along in a scene, you're like, what color were her eyes in chapter 3? I know I'm the only one, and so now you're writing chapter 7, and you go back to chapter 3 and reread the entire chapter to see what color her eyes are. And as you're rereading that chapter, you're like, this is really crappy. And so you start revising that chapter. And chapter 7, which is ready to be written, is not getting written. By the time you get done with chapter 3, you have to scroll back up to the top and go, now what color were her eyes again? I know I'm totally alone, right? But you guys, so basically people who do that, they basically come in here and they use the characters in places. Now when I'm actively writing my draft, I have Scrivener open on one screen because I happen to write in Scrivener. You don't write in Scrivener, you write whatever you want. I have Scrivener open on one side, and I have Plottr open on the other screen. I leave it open to characters and places. If I need to know about a character or a place, as I'm typing along, I look over at Plottr, read my description of how I first described that character, describe that in whatever way I need to my reader, and I stay in my writing space. Okay? Whole goal, not to create a beautiful Plottr file. Whole goal, finish first draft. Your Plottr file looks ugly, but you got a first draft, I'm good. I'm golden, right? It's not about creating beautiful things like that. But so people use characters and places, they use tags to establish relationships, and this is all they use it for. So they can look back at book 2 without having to go back and reread book 2 and see what color were her eyes, what was that character doing, why did I care? you know, that type of a thing, right? So it saves you time going back and rereading things, okay? So that is another way that people use it. The other one is simple plotting. Now I've added some plot structures here. Don't freak out, it's okay, you don't have to do this. But these are very simple plot structures. And basically what I mean is you're looking at tentpole events. So you're allowing yourself to discovery write up until a point. So you're saying, okay, at this point, John and Jane are retired writers. That tells me that this is their ordinary world, right? It's exposition. Maybe I'm writing towards a trigger event. Maybe I'm using the story circle method. But all I'm doing is maybe I know 7 events that happen in my entire book. Maybe the first plot point, the inciting incident, the trigger event, something like that, and that's all I'm looking at. You know, they witness a murder. Well, that's the inciting incident. In this case, that's the first turning point. Now you can look inside these plot structures and it will tell you about where you should be in the novel when this happens. Now, don't get caught up on the math. First of all, this is a first draft and it's okay. And you're just writing for very broad plot points. Then if you want to later on, you can compare it to something that's much more detailed. Okay? Because this is going to tell you, this should happen right around the 25% mark. You're a little bit off. Who cares? It's fine, right? It's a first draft, that's why we edit things, that's why we rewrite things later. Okay? So you can see along here, I've lined these things up. Even at the end, the most there are is 8 in the story circle. 8 events that you know of, right? And none of them are complex. So it's not hindering your discovery writer self. Pants your way all you want to these different plot points, right? Along the way, but you just know at least a little bit of where you're headed. You don't have to know the whole story, you just know a little bit about where you're headed. Which brings me to a bonus method. This bonus method is one that I actually just heard somebody talking about the other day. Tony Lee, is that right? Yeah, Tony Lee was talking about doing it this style. And tons of people do this or something similar. In fact, I'll tell you about one more as we go along here. But so basically, he plots out, he's a plotter user, and he plots out the first 10K words. And he writes to that. And then by then, you know what's happening in the story at that point, so you can probably plan the next 10,000 words. And you write to that. Then you plan the next section of the story. And you write to that, right? Now I've broken up this way. There's tons of ways you can do it. You can come up here and instead customize these titles and say this is the first 10K words and put a summary underneath there and then figure out what's going to happen for the next 10K and put a summary there, and you can even make it simpler than this looks like, right? How many of you have heard Dean Wesley Smith talk about writing into the dark? Yeah, discovery writers, a really popular thing with discovery writers. I went to his talk the other day about writing into the dark. I'm a plotter. Why did I go to his talk? I want to hear about it. I want to hear about how he does it. And how, in a similar way to Lee Child does it, is he writes one scene, he goes back in a cycle, rereads that scene, does some corrections, then writes the next one. And it's a cycle, right? It's a constant cycle. You can use Plottr that way if you want to. Just summarize that scene and go back over it and then start your next one. And what does that hurt? If it keeps you writing, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how you do that. Now, to look at plot structures. So, typically the way I tell you to do this if you're a discovery writer is wait until your draft is done. Now, if you're working with an editor, you can have them help you do this, right? But underneath this main plot, I can use a plot structure template. That's going to freak you out. Those are all my templates. We're going to skip over those, pretend you never saw them. But we have over 30 different plot structures. Now, some of them are separated by genre. Some are just separated by style. As a discovery writer, I'm going to tell you to look at a lot of them and see which one works for you and your particular story, right? So in this particular case, maybe I say, well, I think this is a hero's journey. So I'm going to drop the hero's journey plot structure in there. It's not a terribly complex one. It's got about 12 different beats, right, within the story. Now I'm going to take what I have written, the summary things I put up here, and I'm going to line them up with the hero's journey after I've already written things and see how I did. You can spot potholes, you can spot extra scenes, you can do all that kind of stuff, and then you can go back, because you've got these summaries, you can go back and delete those scenes before you reread them, revise them, do all the different things to them, where you're really just wasting time going over stuff you need to delete anyway. Or you can go back and say, I totally missed that. Like, I had one writer, I was like, so we got down to, I was editing his book, we got down to the end, and I'm like, so what's the ending? Like, just ended the story, but there's no resolution, there's no ending. Where's your ending at? Right? And I can show him on Plottr, look, you don't have an ending to the story. It doesn't make sense. Like, why should I care? Right? You didn't finish. And then I can just you can visually see, oh, that's where that problem is. Now you could do this with, I used to use sticky notes on a wall, a whiteboard, one whole wall of my office was a whiteboard, which was insane. But anyway, so these are things that you can do as you go, okay? So you do this when you're done, compare to an established plot structure and say, how did I do? Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Kind of like, so these are the methods, kind of a plot as you go, deconstruction, story Bible, character tracking, stuff like that. We'll come back to this in just a minute. We'll do just a few more slides here. So we'll review really quick. And basically, so strategy one, you write your scenes, you outline them in Plottr as you go. Just drop them on a plot line as you go. And the core benefit is you keep your story on track. Right? All you're doing is keeping track of where you are, where you're going, keep your story on track. Nothing more complicated than that. I like to make things as simple as possible. The second thing is, strategy two is you're revising your first draft. First of all, you're finishing your draft. I mean, you probably heard that all week here. The whole point is to finish your first draft. Without a first draft, we can't do anything else. There's no editing, there's no marketing, there's no platform strategy until you have a product to sell. You can't make money until you have something to sell. You're like, I'm going to have this product. I've never had a product before, you've never heard of me, but I'm going to have this product. Would you like to buy it before it comes out? Most customers are going to be like, no, I don't think so. I think you want to see something first. You want to see if you can finish something first. Okay? Then you revise using a Plottr template, an established plot structure, whichever one you want. We've got ones from those simple ones I showed you to very, very engineering complex. If you like math and engineering and building things, you can do that too. Okay? The core benefit is you hit your story beats and you figure that out before you have a problem. Before you do revisions, before you hit publish, now I know I've hit my story beats, right? Now strategy number three, just use series Bibles. The only thing you're doing is using a series Bible. You can use plot structure templates to inspire your ideas. Drop them in there and say, maybe this is kind of a hero's journey. If you don't know exactly where the story's going to go, read through a few different plot structures and go, what would be interesting if this happened after this happened after this, right? Don't restrict yourself, don't do anything like that. Just use templates to inspire your ideas and then track your details across series. Tracking your details across series is one of the most valuable things. It was the first thing, when Plottr first came out in 2017 and I bought it, there was no series Bible. And Cameron, the developer, said, what would you like? And I said, a series Bible. And it was the first time he gave me that resting programmer face, the one that he gets when he's like, how am I going to disappoint him and tell him this is going to be really hard? And I was like, I don't care, I just want a series Bible. And so, we went away and did that, right? So tracking details across series for me is super, super valuable. The basic thing is I'm saving time and energy. Again, this is about productivity, it's about getting faster, right? You're a discovery writer, I just want to help you do it better, do it faster. Now number four, tracking tentpole events. Basically, you're visualizing the main events of your storyline. You don't have to go any deeper than that. 7, 8 events, 5 events, whatever you want, and you're writing towards those. You write what happens between them without any additional planning. Let your pants yourself fly, right? It's all fine, it's all good. And the core benefit is you're just focusing your creativity. Sometimes, to a certain extent, your creativity needs structure. And that structure allows you to actually be more creative rather than less creative. Now, for some people that doesn't work, it's fine. That's why we have all of these different ways. Now, additional resources for pantsers and discovery writers. These are interviews that I've done with people who actually are discovery writers, and they're very successful. Because I want to point out that they're very successful to tell you this, that you don't have to plot or not plot to be successful. Some people tell you, no, successful writers never plot. And then you talk to successful writers and you find out they actually do plot. They plot before or after, whatever the case may be. You don't have to do one or the other to be successful. These are two examples. We have these on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Plottr, the Plottr channel. You'll find many of them in a playlist called Thursdays with Troy. That's because they happen often on Thursdays, and they were done by a guy named Troy. So we got pretty creative there. We couldn't think of a name, so that's what we came up with. But anyway, so there's all kinds of interviews with writers and stuff like that. But what we're doing with those is I'm showing you how writers did it. I'll tell you the most important thing that happens in those interviews. They say, I started with this idea, or this plot structure, or this thing in Plottr, and they say, and then. Your most important words are and then. How are you going to take something that's a tool and personalize it to use it the way that works for you? Okay? This is not designed to be a formula. You have to follow a set of railroad track. If you follow this, you're going to be rich. No, you're not. And there's nothing to follow in it. You have all kinds of different things you can do. You can do it all the way you want. Now, Plottr right for you. If you're a visual thinker, even when I was a discovery writer, I was a visual thinker. That's why I had whiteboards and corkboards all over my office. And it made my wife itch and all kinds of bad things. Like, anyway. And it made me, it's actually very uncomfortable many times. I'd have to rearrange those things, spend a lot of time on it. If you want an easy way, if you don't enjoy your current writing process, as you mature as a writer, how many people are, like, relatively, how many books have people published? Like, over 10, under 10, under 5, under 1, or 1, under 1. That would be 0. I'm really good at this math thing, you can tell. That's why I went to engineering 1 semester at ASU. We don't talk about that. Anyway, so you don't enjoy your current writing process, right? As you establish you write more books, you will develop your own process that works for you, and you will fall into a comfortable routine, right? If you have not fallen into that routine yet, or if you've fallen into a routine, you're like, this actually kind of sucks. This might be something that helps you. It's a tool to help you write. Okay, you want an easy way to track your characters and places across individual books and series. I've seen people that do this in Excel. Just, you make my heart hurt a little bit too, but you can still.
That's why I'm here now.
To get out of it, yeah. This is the thing, yeah. If you're gonna do that kind of stuff, get out of the sheets. Is the way I put it. But anyway, yeah, wake up and get out of the sheets. Anyway, it's a horrible Excel joke. Word. All right. So you want to use easy way to track, reference plot points while you're writing. Plottr is really useful for that. And you worry about revising and losing sight of plot holes. That is one of the #1 things I use Plottr for with myself and my editing clients. Constantly track plot holes, get rid of them before you publish they become a problem. Our latest features, how many of you write in Scrivener again? You can import from Scrivener. Look, man, you're catching flies over there. No, not yet. That's one of those that really makes Cameron make that face. And I have captured it. It's in our Slack channel as an emoji, because he's like, you know, I mean, if you know programmers, you know the one. Like, you tell them and they're like, don't ask me for that. No, I want that. But anyway, it's complicated because Microsoft doesn't share their API and then lots of words I don't understand. I read words, not code, in case you didn't notice. So import from Scrivener, search, duplicate, and transfer. That is a super cool feature. If you want to see that later, come see me afterwards. New plot and character templates. Those are super, super cool. Then we have community templates. Let's say you as a discovery writer find a great template that you think would help other people because it works for you. You can share it in our community. It's a pretty cool thing, so you can share it with your friends, and they can go, oh, well, you like that template. Maybe they don't, but who cares? Make up your own. And then characters by book is coming soon. Slide to show you that. Oh, it's after. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'll show you that in just a second. Plottr Pro, this is what I use. You can access. Oh, thank you. I got like 10 minutes, and I want to give you time for questions. So I'm going to race, okay? You can access Plottr on the web, desktop, and mobile, so you don't have any device limits anywhere you have access to the internet. This is what I use, Plottr Pro. The main thing is that you can do real-time collaboration. So if you're working with an editor who also works with Plottr, you can see each other's changes in real time. No more sending file versions back and forth. Kind of like Dave was talking about Atticus, no more final. This is the final Plottr file. Now this is the final Plottr file. Final number 4 Plottr file. No, you just don't have to do that. Built-in cloud backups. And also it allows you to work on a Chromebook. How many people work on a Chromebook? Yeah. Before that, some apps are really hard to get on Chromebook. Again, code stuff, no understand. But now you can just access it on Chromebook. It's super cool. Characters by book. Now this is super cool. So many people told us, and I know this as well, characters change throughout your series, right? Maybe they're a minor character in book 1, and in book 3, they're the main character, right? We're going to have the capability for you to track them and change certain attributes by book. Okay, and then you can also filter them by book. So again, that filter process, I'm only looking at the books from the characters from this particular book, but maybe I want to look at their overall character arc and I can see how they've grown throughout the book and how the wolf has changed from the 3 little pigs to the wolf strikes back, and he's maybe even a sympathetic character in The Return of Mother Pig. Sequels to the 3 little pigs, which I'm not actually right, but it really sounds fun.
So could that work as supporting if you have character pig number 2 is supporting book 1, but becomes the main character in book 2?
Yeah, so the question was, if your character changes, he's a supporting character in book 1, becomes the main character in book 2, yes, you can change that. So super cool stuff. And you can see that things change from book 1, from the 3 little pigs to this next book on that. Now we have tons and tons of resources. We're going to get to questions super fast here. We have weekly live training sessions, video tutorials, documentation, YouTube interviews, and deep dives featuring. You're going to see my face and hear my voice again. I apologize in advance. There are demos, Facebook group, and a public roadmap. If you see a feature and you're like, that would be really great to have on Plottr, you make suggestions, look on a roadmap. If you see other features on there you like, vote for them. Then our developers go, hey, that's really interesting, or they make the face. Either way, but it happens. Upcoming features, advanced world building and chronological timeline. Chronological timeline, for those of you that write historicals, is going to be super cool. I know you guys have been waiting for it forever, some of you. Keyboard shortcuts that we're going to add, and more. We just have constant developing things. I don't even know a lot of times what they are. So for 20 books, 22, if you scan this code, it'll take you to plottr.com/pricing. 30-day money back guarantee, expires Thursday, December 1st. This is on the legacy offline version of Plottr, not on Pro. Plottr Pro is on sale for Nano, I believe, right now anyway. So you just go to our website, go to pricing, you can see what the pricing is. Again, don't ask me pricing questions. Oh no, because my word's not coded and not my thing. So I'll leave this up here for just a second. While we get to questions, and I may pull up my file to answer questions. So if you have questions, be sure to go to the mic. That mic is thin and beautiful, and that mic is hot. Anyway, so go ahead and go up there, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Please warn me when I'm like getting close. Okay. And then if you have other questions, come and see me in the lobby afterwards. Ryan is going to come up. If you have questions about code or pricing or different things that I can't answer, he will help me answer them. First question.
I am probably the least techie person in this room. How easy will it be for me to use this program without wanting to pull out the rest of my husband's hair?
It is super intuitive. What I would tell you to do is to try it. It's like super intuitive, like everything just, like you can just move things, like drag and drop them. The menus are very intuitive. So I would say it's fairly easy. What I will also say is start with the simple features. Use what you need and learn advanced features as you go, because the simple features are super easy to learn. And then if you need something more complex, you can always add that later. You don't have to do it. Just because the feature's there doesn't mean you have to use it. Okay, does that help?
plotting for a single book, but when you're writing a series, sometimes you have that story arc for an entire series. Is there a way to plot involving in all your books?
That is such a good question, and so I'm going to show you this. This is a pretty bad example, actually. But this is, so if I have all of these books plotted out there, I can actually create a timeline for the series view. So under this drop down, I would go to series view, and I can create a timeline here that says book 1, book 2, or creates an overall series story arc.
Awesome.
So yes, you can do that. Yeah, it is. I've done it too, and it is super cool. Anyway.
Hello.
My question is, I know that you can import Scrivener, but can you actually write in this program? Do you end up kind of doing duplications?
So I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Now, technically speaking, can you add a scene card that says chapter 1 or scene 1, whatever, and write right here in this long description? Yes, sure you can. There's not any character limits. I wouldn't be able to do it. It would drive me, I wouldn't be able to do that. But technically you could. Most of the time people export to Scrivener or Word. If you're using another program, Google Docs, whatever the program is, most of the time they will take a Word file and convert it. Like you can add a Word file from Google Docs and use it that way.
So this is a supplementary software to that then?
What's that? Yeah,
This
you
is
would
a
want another
supplementary
software for that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously one simple answer is Atticus, which there's gonna be some integration between those two. So if you like that program already, or you're using something similar, you can Atticus, because Atticus you can upload a docx to and then store basically a Word file to start working on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, making your software people glare at you. Yeah. Scrivener imports from Word. Plottr
Yeah.
imports from Scrivener.
Yes.
Am I asking for a train wreck if I tried to do that to get my stuff into Plottr?
Well, let me give you a quick, oh yeah, go ahead.
It'll import, but it's not going to import in the way that you want it to import. So it'll import the information, but not in like a chapter by chapter format.
So there is a solution to that, but you would have to, I can show you that afterwards, but it would be, you'd have to do some work in Scrivener after you import your Word file before it will import properly into Plottr. Let me just say that. Like it's the easiest way is you can export from Scrivener, from Plottr to Scrivener, import, but it needs to be in kind of that same file format. The NaNoWriMo template, how many are doing Nano this year? Oh yeah, y'all are. Don't friend me on Nano, you'll find out I'm behind. But the Nano template they created where you can automatically update your word count, that will import correctly into Plottr when you're done with your Nano. So that will import, because of the way they have it structured. If you use the novel template that they have in Scrivener, that will also import into Plottr correctly. If you use the novel with parts, it will, right now it won't import it perfectly. It will still import, but not perfectly. Okay?
Yeah. Basically, I started with the tools I use, so I wouldn't have to learn tools before I started writing. I'm a book and a half into a trilogy, and I'm already losing track of characters, and they're all in my nice Excel spreadsheet that you can imagine. So I've got book 1 with about 130,000 words and 60 characters, and who knows how many different little plot threads. And I'm trying to figure out, I need to retool, trying to figure out how agonizing it would be to go through book 1 and put it into Plottr even just to capture the characters. And
That's a lot of scenes, it's gonna be a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's gonna take you a lot of time, and there's not a quick shortcut.
There is no easy way.
No, because if you did it in the Scrivener first with that much information, it's gonna take you some time to clean it up.
All right, thanks.
You betcha.
Thanks so much for this. This has been awesome. My co-writer and I, we depend right now on Google Docs for the collaboration ease. We're hoping eventually to be able to shift to using Atticus once collaboration kicks in. But I mentioned Google Docs earlier and saw you wince. Is there any structural problems between my current process and Google Docs and wanting to use Plottr today?
So no, this is my personal preference, although I hate editing in Google Docs, because I hate the way they have the editing features set up. And this is why Dave, when he's developing Atticus, is making it look much more like Word, is to make people like me happy to use Atticus. Otherwise, we would not be. That's why we don't like Google Docs. But as far as the writing process, there's a good way to go back and forth. You can do that in Word through OneDrive, a little bit more complex, but you can do it in real time. With Plottr Pro, you can do it in real time. You can both work on the same Plottr file at the same time, in real time.
Awesome, thank you.
So collaboration-wise, it works really well for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So my question is basically about the difference between Plottr and Plottr Pro, looking at the comparison. And like one of the versions of regular Plottr allows for 3 devices, but there's no syncing, so how does that work? And then it says like offline only for regular Plottr and edit existing projects while offline with Plottr Pro.
So offline means that the regular desktop version, you
Yeah.
can sync like through another cloud, so in other words, just automatic. So you could save to, like I used to, before we had Plottr Pro, I saved mine to OneDrive. And they would, then technically, but the difference in syncing between devices is if I had my file open on one device and open on another and I'm saving it in OneDrive,
It was screwed
you
up.
get version issues.
Yeah.
With Plottr Pro, you can have both open at the exact same time on different devices, no version issues, because it's syncing in real
Okay,
time.
so you can sync between them with like OneDrive or Dropbox.
Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive.
With that, like you have to make sure you close one before you open the other.
Yeah, otherwise
And
you'll
then
end
the
up.
Plottr Pro allows it just to automatically just all be friends.
Yeah, basically the backup, it backs up automatically, even with regular Plottr, it backs up on a regular basis
And
automatically.
it
so-
backs up to your server?
Yeah, so it backs up wherever you want it to back up to.
Okay.
As far as with regular Plottr.
Mhm.
So if you have it backing up to OneDrive and you have 2 different ones open, you can imagine 2 seconds this one, 2 seconds, you know what I mean? So it's just gonna mess you up.
Great, thank you.
I'm done? Oh, I'm in. Okay, sorry. I will be out.
Doing great.
All right, I'll be out in the lobby area to answer questions if you want specific demos, anything like that, come and see me. If not, thanks for coming. Appreciate you.